to Twisted Tales.
Twisted Tales, hell, blood and bones and untold trails. Twisted Tales, hell, true got teeth and drags and nails. Urban riding, back road sin, dead men talking through the wind. Cursed objects, killer law. Once you hear it, you want more. No fairy dust, no happy end, just how the nightmare really went. Turn it up, don't ask why. This ain't stories, this is true to life.
Good evening, everybody. This is Jeremy from Twisted Tales on Wicked Wednesdays as part of the All Access Network. And as you can see, to my right is my special guest co-host for the evening, my brother on Wicked Wednesdays and Paranormal Unveiled, Mr. Nathaniel Elwell. Thank you for joining me this evening.
No, I'm absolutely stoked for this show, Jeremy. First and foremost, thank you for having me on as your special guest co-host tonight. I know things were a little bit wishy-washy there for a minute because I had those teeth pulled on Monday. But I'm feeling good. I'm ready for the show. You got an amazing guest tonight, so I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, sir. So without further ado, I want to bring to you one half of Gonyak Paranormal, as well as a co-founder of the TDSE, the Digital Seance Experience, Mr. Ron Yacovetti. Please come on in.
Hey.
Hey, Ron. How's it going, man?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate you having what I would consider the lesser half of the Gonyak Paranormal.
I agree. When my wife's not here, I consider myself the lesser half too, without a shadow of a doubt. And one of these days, I hope to get you both on. I'd love to pick both of your brains further on down the road. I'd love to get Lourdes on as well. And God bless your soul. You should working overtime like we all have to be doing this time of year, or anytime these days. It's so crazy out there.
Oh, the lovely Miss Morgan. Yeah, no, she sends her apologies too. She wanted to do this, especially for you, Mr. Cotter. She definitely wanted to be here, and then now Nathan being here only makes it worse that she's not here.
It's okay. Look, we'll have another opportunity at a future date. We'll work it out.
Yeah,
absolutely, man. For those of us who are under a rock and don't really understand what's going on, how did you actually get started in the paranormal, Ron?
Well, I consider myself one of those people who sometimes is under a rock, so this might be a tricky question right off the bat. I got started when I lived in Los Angeles County for 14 years. I'm in New Jersey, where I'm originally from, but I was out there when I started, and I was always intrigued by this stuff, even when you saw it on old, like when I was a kid, and like my parents or grandparents would watch like Abbott and Costello, and they'd have the Dracula or Frankenstein or the old shows, the Bionic Man had Bigfoot, right? So those things always intrigued me. And then when I was living in California, I got the opportunity. At the time, I had just gotten separated and divorced, and I was involved with somebody who, with thousands of cable channels, we couldn't figure out one thing to watch that we both wanted to watch. And then we landed on paranormal TV, which was a thing at the time. So I kind of got hooked into it because I already had that from childhood affinity for those kinds of things. And it hooked me big when I realized that there were actually people who participated in investigating, or what they would, still call, I guess, but ghost hunting. And then that there was actual, academic people, scientific people. There's a lot of different communities that had a hand on this. The church has a hand in on this stuff. They look into it. And I was fascinated by that when I saw that people were actually capturing like vocal phenomenon like EVP. And the first time I heard one, that really that did me in. I was like, all right, I need to see what's going on, because I knew people claimed to experience things. I know a lot of times that those claims would be dismissed for a variety of reasons. Most prominently, probably back then, with some kind of mental defect would get blamed for it. But when I saw that there was studies and things were actually documented and people were really looking into it, that intrigued me. That intrigued me. And then that's really, I think, what kicked me down the path a little bit, because then now I was curious to see, you know, some of the people I had witnessed the work of, or what they had documented. Is that replicable? Can that be? Is it just them? Is there something unique to that situation? Can I do that? Can we recreate what they did? And all those questions just percolate. And so when I was still out there, we dove into it. And then when I moved back to the East Coast in 2014, I got involved with a group that was not very active. They had a history of doing a lot of stuff, but they weren't doing a lot of stuff. So I started branching out on my own more. And then Lourdes and I met in 2016, which now we're about 10 years that we've been together. And then I got her involved into it, which was a whole other thing, because she had a family history with the spiritual side of stuff. Her family practice is Spiritismo, which is from the Caribbean. It's a physical mediumship. People confuse it sometimes with like things like Santeria, but it's analogous to that. So this was an interesting dynamic for a couple, because we both had early exposure or fascination with it, but from two completely divergent paths. And it worked out where, you know, where she learned a lot from me and I learned a lot from her, because of things that we either studied or experienced that was opposite from each other. And it made for a pretty good team. And I say that both because it's true and because my life may depend on it.
That's fair. That's fair. So when you talk about these old school TV show runs, are we talking about like the Hans Halser show on the BBC way back in the day, which a lot of people don't realize he had the first paranormal television show technically. Art Bell had the first paranormal radio show. Are we talking about like stuff like MTV's Fear, or is it a latter aspect?
Yeah, no, the only thing MTV ever got me on was Beavis and Butthead, and I'll admit it.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
It's stupid, but I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Not the Hans Holzer thing, though. I became aware of that a little while afterwards. It was early Ghost Adventures.
Back when Nick Groff was there.
Yes, and early Ghost Hunter stuff is what made me a little bit aware of it. But also, you mentioned, what was the other thing you mentioned? You mentioned the Hans Holzer stuff. Oh, Art Bell. Also, because I had an affinity also for a lot of historical stuff, like a lot of the ancient Egypt stuff before Eric von Daniken's work, before Ancient Aliens became a show or a docu-series or whatever. I was already reading his stuff, Graham Hancock. I actually met with John Anthony West, who was the Egyptologist who was doing the dating of the Sphinx being over 10,000 years old because of the water erosion pattern not matching the windswept pattern that's on some of the other monuments near the plateau.
Super jealous.
So he was a sweet guy. So I was already intrigued by that. And so I had written, this is what brought me to the West Coast. I had written a few screenplays, one of which I was in meetings with development executives at Warner Brothers, Touchstone Disney, Paramount, Dimension Films. And at the time, I had sent something in, I think on email way back. And I was still living in Jersey. This is probably 1999 before I left for California, which was 2000. And I got a phone call, which I didn't believe at first, but like a minute or so into the call, from Art Bell. And I actually talked to him for like 40-something minutes about a lot of this stuff because I was writing the screenplay at the time. So I actually had a conversation with him on the phone the one time before I had moved to California. So before I even did anything paranormal. So those kinds of things were already kind of embedded within my psyche from previous experience. But the thing that opened the door to the quote unquote ghost hunting was the earlier paranormal shows that broke the door open for all of us who are doing this now for mass media reach, right?
Yeah, and Jeremy can chime in on this, but I think you're 100% right. Sorry, Jeremy, I'm used to hosting my own show. I'm not trying to take over yours.
It's all good.
But I feel like you're 100% right. Like when it comes back to it, when you look at it, like my first experience with paranormal stuff was Ghost Hunters back in 2004. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that original show, and I'm watching these people go out and they've got these technical devices. And you're like, people can actually do that? That's really cool. And it started a mass influx of investigators, if you will. And the people that came in, though, they based everything they saw off of what they saw on television shows, not realizing the technical know-how and knowledge that the people had in the background, as far as, like, say, Jason Hawes, you know, and Grant Wilson. They were plumbers. They knew how to listen for certain things, and they could decipher whether or not the sounds that we're hearing were natural from plumbing, natural from wood shrinking, expanding, stuff like that. And they could actually kind of decipher that and make it a more, to be honest aspect of the paranormal. It's nothing like what you see on television now.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's one of the things that you learn at some point quick, is that whatever you are or whatever you have or bring to the table does a lot of times color or enhance that which you bring to the table when you do paranormal stuff.
Yes.
Lourdes, who again is not here for the show, by trade, she is a licensed New York court reporter. Now, what they don't do anymore, and they were already launching this kind of endeavor pre-COVID, but then when COVID happened, it became even more necessary, was that she's no longer in the courtroom as a stenographer or court reporter. So they are listening to recordings and taking down testimony. She says always, she goes, what I do for the living, I do for the dead. She's listening to voices, different speeds, cadences, tones, people talking over each other, having to discern what somebody's saying. A word can sound like a different word, where people hear, right, in the paranormal, somebody hears one word, somebody hears another word out of a device. Doesn't mean it wasn't a word. So she has to pick out what that is, because it's it's testimony for the state of New York.
Right.
So that skill, who would have known, right, when she started that career 20 years ago, I think, or whatever, 20-something years, who would have known that there would have been a hobby or a side endeavor that she would be involved in where that would be applicable, where that would have some kind of tool in the tool belt categorization, right, for being useful outside of, like, when the day job is done. That skill set still transcends into the next thing.
So in my mindset, her being able to pick out those words and stuff, that completely rules out audio pareidolia, is what we would call it technically.
I'd never say rules out.
But it
I
makes
would
it
say
less likely.
it diminishes the odds. Yeah. And that argument I made a second ago is what she says, is that, because they did, that's very sweet, Morgan. She loves you too. When they did a test for ITC stuff, I forget what the survey was, or the experiment, whatever. And they were doing a thing, and they were showing, based on pareidolia, that 85% of people heard something different, and then 10% of people heard this, and 5% didn't hear anything, whatever. And they were using it as a rationale to dismiss it. And what she says is that if I hear the word rip, but you said trip, it doesn't mean you didn't say a word, because I heard the aggregation of sounds into a linguistic form that we call a word. It doesn't mean that I didn't hear a word in a language. It just means I misheard. There could be a drop syllable. So when people go, when they go, what's up? And then you don't hear the T and what's up, right? Yep. But you still contextually get what it is. So it's stuff like that. And so when she pointed that out, that made sense to me. And so it diminishes it.
Sense. No, that's amazing. It is amazing. Everybody that I've met in the paranormal brings something different to an investigation, whether it's technical or whether it's metaphysical, or whether it's abilities or direct contact spirits, or however you go about it. And it actually segues into my next question, because the TDSE, the Digital Seance Experience, is something that you guys created. So, what caused you to want to actually create this particular way of communicating with spirits?
That's a really good question, because it's going to lead me into something that I sometimes forget to include. So TDSE, the Digital Seance Experience, the name comes from the Digital Seance Initiative, which was the third of the 5 books that I have out on Amazon. And so we changed it to experience because we were doing this at events, and we felt like it was more of an experience. The initiative was the push to get it out, and I had written that as the book title, but we changed it. It was derivative of earlier work that we did that was from direct radio voice. Okay. So direct radio voice predates the Spirit Box, the Ghost Box, the Frank's Box by Frank Sumption. A lot of people, this is probably an unpopular ITC opinion, but the Frank's Box with the sweeping through the radio, to me, that was not a progression.
It was
of
not.
ITC.
I
think right? Because a progression would be a topological line of, you know, improve upon, improve upon, improve upon. But it was a divergence. It took something that already existed, which was direct radio voice. And then when you added the sweeping in and going through broadcast stuff, you introduced low-hanging fruit to disqualify it as pareidolia, because now you're introducing vocals which are on the radio. I'm not saying they don't work. I've heard things come out of them with timing and relevance, which is the barometer for measurement we use. That's hard to dismiss. I go, who am I pointing at? And it says Jeremy. The odds of that, unless the DJ on the radio is clairvoyant, right? How do they know? So I'm not saying they don't work, but this stuff for people who are cynical is already teetering on the impossible, if not already so. So then you're putting in a reason to doubt it more. So assumption was originally, if I'm not mistaken, using it for communicating with extraterrestrials was the plan, not spirit.
You are correct, yes.
But I don't think it was an improvement, because if you saw earlier stuff, the Marcello Bacci, Friedrich Jurgensen, a lot of the pioneers, Dr. Annabelle Cardoso, who was the only surviving pioneer of EVP and ITC research from back then, and she mentored me into direct radio voice. They were just using a vacant channel on an AM shortwave, medium wave frequency. And sometimes Bacci would toggle it a little bit, like within a 16th of an inch, or kind of like, but there was no sweeping, and they were vacant channels. He wasn't going through broadcast. So when I saw the efficacy of that compared to what boxes were doing, I looked at her. I was like, how is nobody doing this? So in 2019, we brought direct radio voice back and started doing it. And we were doing it for a couple of years, pretty much behind closed doors, because it wasn't about likes, clicks, and follows. It was about seeing if we could replicate what we saw Marcello Bacci doing. Now, he didn't create it, but he was most known for it because of the work that he did over a 20-something year period that was really staggering if people saw it. So I found that to be fascinating. And at the time, anybody who was front line, top of the game in ITC was a builder. They were building boxes. And these are brilliant people, some still building it today, and they make incredible stuff. But I saw that. And then so for me, out of an inadequacy, because I don't weld and solder, and like, that's not my thing. If I did, I would have fewer fingers to high five with. So I don't.
High three.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw this method. I was like, here's an opportunity for me to participate in this stuff. And then when I got in contact and developed a friendship with Dr. Annabelle Cardoso, who's now in Spain, and she sat with Bacci, she sat with Friedrich Jurgensen, she sat with Konstantin Radove. Before voices were called EVPs, they were called Radove voices, before the term EVP was even created, electronic voice phenomena. So she mentored me into this, and I was like, this is something I can do. This lady's not building devices with plasma discs and sweep circuits and stuff. So I was like, this is a chance for me to see if I can participate in doing this. So I was in hook, line, and sinker. And so the Digital Seance Experience is an extension of that, the direct radio voice process. And along the way, we were influenced big by a gentleman from Florida named Keith Clark, who goes under a banner called Varanormal with a V, varanormal.com. He introduced us to the software component that is part of the process to do everything people do with audio capture in the paranormal that they do when they go home, right? They denoise it, they amplify it, they slow it down, then they present it. So what he introduced us to with the software is doing all those things in real time so that you can have a conversation in the moment, perhaps, or at least a dialogue, a back and forth, not when you go home and put headphones on and the moment's gone, right? So he did that for us, and we initially did the software, and you heard voices like it was like a crowded room. It was crazy. I pulled back. I went, no, I'm going back to the purist. We're just going to the radio again. I took the software part out, and then there was something to it. It was kind of tugging on my heartstrings a little bit. I went, all right, let's go back. And then that's when I spent a few years trying to refine it and get it to be quieter, so that only thing you would hear would be if voices were emergent from the noise floor, which was being quelled to the point you didn't even hear it, right? So that's where it came from, but it's derivative of direct radio voice. And I say that because it's important to me that, and this is why I mentioned Keith Clark, it's important to me that the shoulders upon whose shoulders that we stand on, that we, with reverence and respect, acknowledge those people, because if it was not for Dr. Cardoso and the people who she sat with and worked with, who did this stuff, who actually pioneered voice phenomenon, I would not have done anything that I have done with this. It provided me an outlet for me to excel and do something that I did not otherwise. If I had to build boxes, I would have been another builder in the pack, and probably not a very good one.
Well, with what you said about your knowledge of soldering, I agree. You might not have been, but so correct me if I'm wrong. But from my understanding, when you do the TDSE, it's not necessarily you're pulling from radio waves. It's strictly white noise, correct?
Yeah, analog white noise generators in a closed system. They go through an interface that puts multiple generators into one signal, or one channel, I should say, and that's what goes through the software. And then through the speaker, only things that emerge louder with amplitude over the noise floor, because that's being suppressed, you'll hear. And occasionally you get a blip or a sound, but for the most part, a lot of times it runs silent unless there is something that sounds like words.
And I can vouch for that. I've seen this in person, I think 3 times now. I've seen this demonstrated in person.
I've actually seen when I first met you guys, I met you and Lourdes at the Emory Estate as part of when Sam had his event there, along with Anthony and a couple other people, and I think you guys were still working on all the stuff at that point. I'm not really sure. It's been a few years since we've been to the Emory, and it really is amazing. The whole thing. I do want to sit in on one. I know that you guys are going to be doing them in Maine at the Maine Paracon this year, and hopefully I'll be able to sit in on it, because it's something that I really want to actually experience the whole thing, and I've seen you doing it other places, and I got caught up doing something else, and it really is an amazing experience.
I made it a point last year when me and Morgan were at Maine that we made it a point to go and sit in on the TDSE.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, from a man who is completely skeptical about pretty much 9 out of 10 things, and I would like to think of myself as a somewhat intelligent person, I could not tell you how this process works, but what I can tell you is the results are awesome.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the comments. Yeah, Scott's a great guy. He's also one of the people involved with the IDC Institute with J.W. Prather. So I appreciate that. It's still mind blowing for us, and we've had opportunities to share it with people, and people have had profound, meaningful experiences. They'll hear stuff come through. A lot of times, what's ideal is when we or someone else hears something come through, and it has significant semantic value to somebody in the room who was hoping to get something, and we don't have any way to know it.
So I cannot remember who it was, but we had that happen in Maine.
Yes, that was one of the places it happened. It happened there. It happens every year at the expo in New Jersey, a lot actually at the Jersey one. We've had it happen. And that's what I was going to say too, is that we use a lot of terminology in the field when we talk about stuff. We'll just talk about information, but there's more than one kind. There's symbolic information, there's semantic information, right? If somebody was standing across the street from you and they did this and you didn't know what that was or what it meant, it would have no value, right? It's symbolic. You don't know what it means. Exactly. Now, if you know what this means, it means something good happened, but you don't know why they're doing it, that you're still getting symbolic information, but not semantic. But if you know that they're doing this because they just got good news about someone they were worried about, now you have both, right? So when we hear words that technically shouldn't be there, that's symbolic. So a couple instances, Lourdes will say what she hears, or one of us will say what we hear. But when it hits a chord with someone who's in the room, who it's profoundly important to, that's semantic value. And that we can't gerrymander and create that. It just happens when it happens. We don't know who's coming. We don't know anything about the people in the room. But when those moments happen, that's the payoff for us. Do I make a little money if I sell books? Sure. Have we gotten paid to appear some places and do something? Yeah, sure. We're not buying yachts and stretch limos and stuff with paranormal money. So
No.
when I say that that's the big payoff for us, it really is, because that's priceless. When we do something that we feel we're blessed to be able to do, and it does something for somebody else that we didn't expect, but they take away something that means something to them. So, and again, there's no way for us we can't influence it. It's not, and I know I'm tiptoeing. I'm only putting a toe in the pool that is Nathan's forte. People are critical of apps sometimes because if the device has a microphone, perhaps it can, go off of what you say, or if it's got any kind of like geofencing where it knows where you are or whatever, perimeter. So we don't have any of that in this method. We can't make it do something. There's no word banks, no sound banks, there's no data in analog white noise that's being created in real time. So anything, if you heard one word the whole night, that's all you need. That's your black swan. The saying, if you can't say all swans are white, if you see one black swan, that's all you need is that one. That's it. One word. And you can no longer say that it's not a thing or it can't be done.
No, because I will never forget that lady's reaction. As soon as she heard the word, she went from kind of sitting like this to, and then like instantly she was like, "What did that just say?" And I think you and Lourdes both at the same time said what you thought it said, and she was just awestruck.
Yeah, that's our favorite part. That's our favorite part, and it's huge to us. It doesn't do. We don't walk away with thousands of followers on YouTube or anything from doing it, but we sure do feel good when those kinds of things happen.
I can tell you, I know you say you're not buying yachts with paranormal money, but if you ever do buy yachts with paranormal money, look, brother, I'll be happy with a kayak.
I'll tether it to the yacht.
So I'm just curious because I'm relatively Stone Age when it comes to technology, so I'm just trying to understand. So with the TDSE, do you use it in like residential as well as professional locations, or have you used it in both?
We have done some residential stuff, but we can get voices with it if it's working, which usually will deliver anywhere. So I would not, on the strength of getting anomalous voices, and this is by any ITC or EVP methodology, I would not deem a location haunted based on getting voices, because we can get them anywhere. We got them in our house when we run sessions to work through things and run through it, whatever. So I wouldn't say that. So for that reason, I don't think if somebody does have activity in a home and they really are genuine about needing help, I don't think we're the first line of defense or offense, depending on how you look at it, for those people. We've been brought in a few times. People have done a preliminary. They've interviewed the people, gone over all the checks and balances and stuff, whatever, to make sure that they're above board and there's something going on. And then they think, could this be Uncle Phil or Aunt Jane or whatever or something? So then they'll bring us in because we don't know anything. And if those names come out or something that they used to say comes out, then that connects the dots for them. So we've been the tip over the net in some of those instances. But when you're actually trying to volley the thing and keep it go, we're not the ones to call in for that initially, because we can get voices at the house and it doesn't mean it's Uncle Phil. It doesn't mean the house is haunted or that there's activity going on. Right. It's just based on how we think this works with regard to consciousness. That's pretty much, it's connecting dots that are too vastly separated for us.
Okay, well that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I was just curious because I know that it can probably pick up voices anywhere, whether it's like a haunted location, say like a Lizzie Borden or something like that, versus maybe even a house or an office building or something along those lines, because you just never know what's gone on over there over the course of life, decades or whatever. So when you do the TDSE in like say popular haunted locations, where have been some of the locations you've had the best results in your opinion?
The Shanley Hotel in Napanoch, New York is one of the best places for us as far as that. I know we've gotten stuff in White Hill, Gettysburg. We've gotten stuff. A lot of the meaningful moments that I was talking about that people have had, a lot of those have been at Paracons, believe it or not, where they'll give us a room so we can do it closed door and people can pay attention without, you know, the noise of the vendors and people walking around and whatever. Like the Jersey Expo has been routinely for at least 3 years in a row, rife with profound meaningful moments for people.
I've got to make it down to the Jersey Expo at some point.
Every year. So even sometimes the reputation of a location and its activity and it's haunted and whatever else, sometimes we don't get as much in a place like that. And sometimes, you know, we're in a classroom in a high school for a con like the Jersey one, and people come in and people have meaningful experiences and they send us recordings going, holy crap, listen to this. And it's really, sometimes the location can be a factor. I'm not saying that it doesn't factor in. And this is where it can take a slide into a metaphysical discussion more, because the voices and what can come through, what we can have experientially, is not tethered or limited to a location. Not to say the location can't be a factor in it, and I can explain the difference in what I'm saying, but like if you're at, you know, a 1712 home or location in Gettysburg, it doesn't mean that you're only going to get spirits to come through that are from that home or from that era or from Gettysburg. It doesn't mean that. That can certainly play a role in perhaps in what comes through or what's experienced, but it's not limited or bound to the physical, what we perceive to be physical as the location goes.
Okay. Wow. So
No,
go ahead, Nate. What was that?
Oh, I was going to say, and that's a very fair point. So when you do these TDSEs at events and you do them at, say, a known local haunted location, right? Here would be my question. Do you think it's more plausible that the TDSE works, I'm not going to say better, but I'm going to say maybe there's a way that the spirits that are connected to the people attending said Paracons could affect the equipment that you're using in a way that a haunted location cannot. Does that make sense?
That's a great question. So now I'm going to draw the metaphysical line that I was tap dancing around a moment ago.
Yep.
Because it becomes necessary for me to make a distinction. Otherwise, it will get lost.
Okay, fair enough.
So again, I'm not an expert in anything. Let me preface this by saying that. So I've been for the last number of years studying a metaphysical philosophy called analytic idealism, which is, and I'll explain. We have technical idealism, which is a fusion of that metaphysical philosophy combined with the technical element of what it is we do with what we've been discussing.
I'm intrigued.
So let me start with that since it's behind me like a banner on a commercial. So when we say technical idealist, it means that, and I'll explain the idealism stuff more. Analytic idealism puts forth that the nature of reality or reality itself is fundamentally mental, not physical. And I'll explain the difference. So when we use the equipment, we're not finding ghosts, but it's more of what we would call a form of perceptual engineering, right? Tools that help us see past or a little bit further than our biological filters and our sensory input gives us for the reality that we can take in. So the metaphysical thing. So first of all, and I think this is something that's important, metaphysics, I think a lot of times where metaphysical gets thrown around, and I think it's so tightly bound to candles and crystals and sage and
it goes far beyond that.
Yeah, well, those have practical applications within belief systems.
Yes.
But metaphysics literally means that which stands behind the physics. So science, which physics is, science tells us what nature and reality does or doesn't do. It models or predicts behaviors. It asks questions of nature or reality, and then through experimentation, you get outcomes, and then you have determinations of If something happens routinely and regularly enough, then you have what you call a law of nature, right? What we call gravity or the speed of light. It doesn't mean that they are fixed indefinitely and can't alter or can't vary. The speed of light did, in fact, change over a couple-year period to a slight margin. So those are regularities. Now, science should be metaphysically neutral, agnostic, right? Scientists, however, are people. And people have metaphysical biases or beliefs, and sometimes unknowingly, right? They have what are called unexamined assumptions. And those things will create the lens through which you see the data or interpret the experience, how you evaluate stuff. So it all starts with belief. So the metaphysical part is important because metaphysical philosophy or analytic idealism is a means at it's putting forth an educated assumption, right? Metaphysical philosophy is the art of educated speculation, right? We're not going to know. We're monkeys on a rock with higher cognitive function for 50,000 years. We're not going to know every nuance that is reality and what the world. I mean, we're not going to know everything.
I agree.
Right.
But what it tries to do is it tries to put forth a notion of what reality or nature may be fundamentally, and in a way that does not conflict with science. That's important because I think there's a big push in the paranormal today to invoke science for credibility and validity. But then, because I think a lot of folks aren't grounded in what their metaphysical belief is, then they step from one to the other to the other. So they're conflicting with this very same science that they invoked minutes before in the extension of the theory or the hypothesis that they're explaining, their idea, whatever the concept
Oh, that's
is.
a good point.
Right? So it's important to know because it's not to know, but at least to have a position that, so you have a consistency to it, so you don't contradict your own theoretical ideas or your own concepts when you're explaining stuff. So the reigning worldview is what's called physicalism. It was known more as materialism. And it's basically saying that physical matter is all there is, and everything else is either a hallucination, illusion, or a byproduct or an epiphenomenon of, created by physical stuff. So under that view, consciousness is created by your physical squishy brain. It's a byproduct of brain activity, neural firings, chemical reactions, right? That's what consciousness is, according to that. That worldview is the same one that doesn't say that what we think happens or what people claim in the paranormal is possible, right? So that's not the worldview to go with if you're going with the experiences that we talk about as legitimate. But it's the de facto, it's the default worldview if you don't know what the options are and then look at them in a broad stroke and go, all right, well, based on what do I think this? And then you really take the time to introspect on that. Idealism says the opposite. Idealism says that mental processes, consciousness, is the substrate or the foundation for reality, from which all can be explained, but that which itself cannot be reduced to anything else. That's what idealism says. And again, I'm not saying either one is right, but from an idealist perspective, we start with the experience. And then we try to explain the experience, and in doing so, or understanding it, we try not to conflict with what is known and reliably documented in the sciences. We're not supposed to conflict with those things. That's why people in the paranormal all the time look at science as the enemy because it's trying to debunk or disprove. That's not science. Debunking is an agenda. Debunking is a bias. Right? It's saying that this stuff is impossible, and I'm going to show you why. Right. So, and you've heard the saying, and it's I'm trying to remember his name, who's famous for this. The saying that says, extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof or evidence.
Almost sounds like James Randi.
He didn't coin it. I'm trying to remember. Oh, Carl Sagan made it most known. He wasn't the first one.
Yes. Okay.
The Sagan standard, right? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof or evidence. And I will tell you that is only true if by being termed extraordinary, it is done so because of what it is that's on the table doesn't fit into an ideology that says it's not possible. And only because of that. For something to be coined as impossible, it is only because of the worldview that is evaluating it says that it doesn't fit into this box. This ideology, this worldview does not allow for it, so it's impossible. And that's what the cynics and debunkers and skeptical people of today will do. They will take everything off the table that doesn't fit into the box and rule it out as impossible. So it's very easy. It's very easy to know everything that's on the table for discussion when you have removed from the table that which you cannot explain.
That's fair.
That's the importance of the metaphysical position, to know where you stand so you don't contradict yourself. And then when you so I wouldn't even seeing is believing is a slippery slope. Perception is reality. I 100% agree with. Yes, and Occam, I was looking at Christie's got a lot of good comments. Occam's razor, right? Law of parsimony. So that's the difference too. In science, when you add things into a theory or an explanation, you have to have the ability to falsify. It has to be grounded in something. In metaphysical philosophy, when you take something out of a theory and you make it more parsimonious, the strength comes from that, by making it more parsimonious, by taking things from the theory that are extraneous or that you don't need, building in all the added stuff to fill out a narrative. So it's different. The ground rules are not necessarily the same. So that's just to kind of paint the picture, because now you get back to what Nate was originally talking about, which is the locations and are the people themselves affecting the equipment more so than the place or the spirits at the place. So under idealism, which also completely is in sync with what quantum physics has said for at least 50 so years, that physicality is the result of observation and measurement. Things don't have physical boundaries. And then when we measure or observe them, then they reveal what those boundaries and those numbers are. The physicality is the result of observation and measurement. So it jives with that also. So under idealism, what is physical is just representation. Everything is mental. Everything is consciousness. And then when we perceive something as physical, that's how it presents itself to our sensory input. Right? Under materialism, those things are fundamentally physical. And any of the qualities that are involved, the textures, the colors, even if you get a feeling from it, that's all in your head. Everything out there is exhaustively explained in numbers. So when you look at the location and you go, well, the feelings like stone tape, feelings are trapped here in the wood. You're creating that's a dualistic example or explanation. You're saying that there's a physical place that's holding on to in the wood mental qualitative states, qualia, experiential things, and then that's how those two things coexist. The physical thing is holding on to the mental stuff. Under idealism, the house or the structure itself is not fundamentally physical. The house is the appearance of a mental construct that appears physical, and then the emotional or qualitative states, the love, the despair, whatever, those things are also mental states. So now you have mental and emotional intermingling. Do we see that ever? Every day. Our thoughts and our emotions intermingle and influence each other. But we don't see every day is we don't see feelings trapped in a piece of Victorian crown molding for 150 years and then getting released for reasons no one has ever explained. Stone tape, originally called place memory. No one has ever explained what the play button is. What's the trigger?
That's fair.
And then if you go with the duality of physical stuff and mental stuff, then when you say that the wood is holding on to the love or the despair, something tragic happened, somebody was killed, the despair gets trapped in the wood, right? When you say that, you are now playing in the court of physics. You're saying that there's something that is fundamentally physical and is holding on to something mental or emotional, something qualitative. So if you can drill down with instrumentation and see these little molecules that make up the wood, then somewhere in there you ought to be able to see these other little molecules with discrete boundaries that are the love or the despair that's being held in the wood. But you can't. Why? because you can't quantify a qualitative state. You can't measure a qualitative state, right? How much does my love weigh? What is the length of my thoughts? So when we say that these things are happening per stone tape, the theory falls apart as it stands. And this is widely accepted in the field. I've presented it to people who still will rather continue on with the explanation that's been out there forever. Now, if, under a different metaphysical platform, under idealism, you have, like I said before, the house is the image of a mental state, and then the emotional states that are part of it intermingling. There's no problem there, right? You have what's called a cognitive neighborhood, where if you remember your first car and you're driving along the coast and the wind going past your hair and the song you had on and the shirt you were wearing and the color of the car, those are all different quality things. And you're remembering all those part as a collective memory. That's a cognitive neighborhood. Oh, wow. So when somebody as a medium or somebody walks into a place with psychometry or what we call stone tape and they pick up on stuff, it's not physical stuff holding on to mental stuff. It's mental stuff mixing with emotional stuff as part of a reality that is fundamentally conscious. And that's how you can have those experiences and not get blown out of the water by people touting science, because you're invoking physics and then you're coming up with a scenario that you cannot possibly substantiate because you can't measure a qualitative state.
Oh, wow.
Jeremy, you just have this look on your face like your mind has just been blown.
Okay, listen, I might look like the kid who was eating crayons in class while the actual adults are talking. I get that. But no, so my question that spawned off in my head as you were talking was, so as far as like you were talking about, like houses holding the energy and everything being intertwined, so is the same is it the same tethering as like haunted objects, like enchanted objects as well? Like, you know, how people have like collections of enchanted objects or dolls or masks or whatever. Is it the same? I figured I'd ask your opinion on that, because that was the first thing that popped into my mind, was because we all know plenty of people who have enchanted or haunted objects. So does the same fall into that category as well?
It's a great question. Yeah, I'm glad you asked it. I would say, yeah, for consistency's sake, and this is where I think where we as a field can contradict ourselves. If from a metaphysical position, you either believe that things are fundamentally physical or that they're fundamentally mental, based on the two models as I explained them, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go with the doll is not fundamentally physical, but it is just, to our sense perception, appears to be what we see as physical, what we experience as physical. Then, as part of the cognitive neighborhood, if something bad happened around the doll, you can argue that there's a negative energy, or whatever you want to call it, that's part of that same, let's say like a whirlpool, right? It's part of that same little whirlpool. And that's a great example too of how, even with us, right, that we're part of the same universal consciousness as one overarching mind at large, but we identify separately. That's through what's called dissociation, right? We identify individually, but we're part of a collective, right? So that's under idealism what it says. And then so every metaphysical position has its detraction. So idealism is, if there's one universal mind and we're all part of it, then how do you explain the fact that we identify separately? And so the gentleman who I've been studying under for a couple of years, Dr. Bernardo Castro, looked at that and he goes, well, is there any model in nature we see that you can extrapolate from that something similar happens? And there is. Dissociative identity disorder is one mind that fragments into multiple centers of subjectivity, multiple identities. It's one mind. And it happens when we dream. When you dream, you're you in the dream. You're the dream avatar. You're not the trees, the animals, the other people you talk to. Mm-hmm. But when you wake up, you don't mourn the loss of your dream avatar, because you wake up and go, oh, that was all me.
Right.
One mind fragmented and did all that. So I'm not saying that the universe is suffering from a pathology. What I'm saying is that there's a model in nature where we see one mind fragment where you have individual centers of identity, right? Okay. So under idealism, those physical things are representations of mental processes. So you can have that cognitive neighborhood where you feel something negative or things perhaps aren't positive around that doll. It's not to say that there is a soul inside of a doll. It's not to say that the doll is possessed. When we say that things are attached to the objects, no one ever that I've heard goes into any kind of an explanation to explain how an attachment, how is something attached to a physical object if it's fundamentally physical and the attachment is not fundamentally physical. And how would you know then? Like, see, when you step into the court of physics, then you have the onus of continuing by extension that line of thinking, and that's where people don't. That's where they don't, and then that's where you run into a problem. Well, there's a spirit attached to this vase. Okay, I won't say it's. I can't prove it isn't.
Right.
You can't prove that it is. So then, what is your position grounded in? At least if you can make a coherent argument, and that's. Yeah, Carl Jung is amazing. So Dr. Bernardo Castro, who I studied under, he's not traditionally like 100%, but he's of a Jungian metaphysical philosophy. So it's Jungian influence for sure. So that, and that's important too, because we look at that, go like, we need to prove the afterlife, or you say that the vase is haunted or the doll is haunted. And I go, prove it. And you go, I can't. And I go, well, if you can't prove it, then it's false. And you say, well, you can't disprove it, so it's true. And that's a very binary, ambivalent scenario, right? It's either true or it's false. It can't be neither or both. It's something called the law of excluded middle. But sometimes that's not applicable, right? If you go under idealism with the thing is not fundamentally physical, then you can make the argument that's coherent, that says that it's part of the cognitive neighborhood. If you say that it's physical and then you say that it's holding on to an emotional or a mental thing, then you have to at least ground that in something. But being able to prove or disprove itself is not enough. I could say that there's no such thing as gravity. There's no such thing as any of the forces, dark matter, dark energy. None of that stuff exists in the cosmos. The only reason the planets move and stay where they are and do what they do or spin is because there's this interdimensional, invisible creature called the flying spaghetti monster, and he just moves things around with his noodly appendages, right? I can say that.
I'm down with this theory.
You can't prove it's not true, right? But that's not reason enough to stand on something. You have to be able to ground it in something. So just because you can't prove that's not true, is there any reason to lean into this spaghetti monster idea? No. And I think a lot of the accepted and carried forward hypotheses or theories in the paranormal today fall into what I call the spaghetti monster category.
Okay.
You can't disprove them, so people stick with them. But they don't realize that by extension, when you say one thing, you're also adherent to that line of thinking for consistency. But then when you explain something else, you abandon that. And you go from the science that you invoked to mysticism or something else, because you don't have a clear, coherent path by extension of the same thought. So that's the ground floor, and this is what I learned from this over the last number of years, is the ground floor, whatever you believe, is your metaphysical position. And then from there, you start with the experience, and then you try to explain it and understand it, and you look to science. Science is important. I'm not downplaying science. But science tells us what nature and reality does. It doesn't tell us what nature and reality is. That's a metaphysical position. And metaphysics doesn't know it. It puts forth its best guess based on all the things that we know and through the influence of things like theology and theurgy and science and the different sciences. So it has to gel with those things also, but it's not in and of itself going to peg it. So that's where these things, the sciences and the philosophies and spiritual, like these things need to inform and govern each other. It's not a competitive thing. We don't want to fuse them into one thing either, because then it just gets muddy and then they lose their value.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that happens a lot today. Everybody tries to put everything under the umbrella of science. They're trying to do everything with science or everything by science. Science is a tool in the toolbox, but it's not the only tool. Right? So you could hammer in a nail with the butt end of a screwdriver, but wouldn't the hammer be better?
Yes.
It's not always the right tool for the job. Sometimes it's like trying to make a ruler out of water and then measure the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
I mean, I would probably do that. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow, that's
like I have this is why I told you, Jeremy. Like Ron is amazing. I have so much to learn from this guy, and I continue learning.
I'm learning now. Yeah, absolutely.
these are just thought-provoking ideas. Like, again, I'm not saying I've got it figured out. I'm not an expert in anything. I spend time. I meet with Dr. Bernardo Castro every week in a group of people in this ambassadorship program who I get off of every meeting and I go, did I even graduate? Like, it's unbelievable. Thank you, Chris. You as well.
So real quick, Ron. I see we're running up on the hour. I don't want to take up all Jeremy's time.
Don't worry about it.
What, 6 books out, right?
5 right now. 6 is in the works, but I've been
6 in the works. So Afterlife Contact is amazing. My favorite though is Paranormalization.
Okay, appreciate that.
I love the content. You see, I have multiple bookmarks here.
I do that.
That's for the next time I have you on my show. So, but I love the way you write. Like what got you into wanting to pen your experiences?
It's weird because when I was a kid in school, when I was supposed to like to read or was supposed to read, I didn't want to. It was like torture. But when I started diving into some of this stuff, the paranormal things and what was out there, I started reading and I got interested. A few years back, 3 years or so now, when I came across a book by Professor Charles Tart called The End of Materialism, which is the metaphysical materialism.
I actually think that's in my library.
It's a great book. That got me started, and then from that I found Dr. Bernardo Kastrup's stuff, and then Kastrup just changed everything. And I'm so thrilled that at one point I get to talk to him weekly, but that I actually got to tell him that he changed everything for us. How we look at what we do with the digital seance, how we look at what we call paranormal evidence and such in these experiences. It's not that it's not that we know and not that we're right. And if you don't see it that way, you're wrong. It's not that at all. It taught us a different way to look at stuff and to be adherent to the consistency of it, to not invoke science and then violate it 2 minutes later. Right. And it did change everything for us. I recommend Dr. Bernardo Kastrup's works, especially for people in the paranormal. Dr. Jeffrey Kripal, amazing work. Dean Radin, another great author to read. Those are the people, I think, who the ghost hunting community doesn't see a lot. I don't think they're visible on the landscape where a lot of us would normally cull information or look for stuff. But if you really dive into this stuff, like I did, you find one book and then it leads you to other people. That's where the fascination came. So in Paranormalization, I started peppering in some of what I learned from Dr. Kastrup and the idealism. Afterlife Contact went even more into it, which is why that one was more my favorite, because there are some things I hold a position on that are consistent from book 1 through 5 to present day. And there are some things when I have changed my position or my explanation on it from people like that, from conversations with people like that who have reshaped how it is I look at it. And then now I look through everything through the lens of an idealist, but I can still hear other perspectives. But it's definitely changed the whole thing a lot for us. Neville Goddard. There you go.
Yeah, I was trying to find my bookmark. I'm at page 107 on this, so I'm not completely done with this book yet.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating, but it changed everything. So that's where we took on the whole idea of the technical idealism, just to kind of be able to fuse the idealist metaphysical philosophy, reality fundamentally mental idea with the technological part of what the digital seance thing is, to kind of trying to bridge the gap so that these didn't seem like two completely divergent ideas, right? Because you
guys do a great job with it. Let me tell you, 2 of my most favorite people in the paranormal, and I don't say that lightly.
I appreciate it to the comments too from Bill. Bill's a blast to have. He sat with us a bunch of times too.
Bill's awesome.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when you have people like him and some of the other folks like you guys who have been in the room with us, I think sometimes that, again, cognitive neighborhood. right? So if we're all part of the one collective, so to speak, if that modality has any legs to it, which I think it does, then 100% the people involved in the room, the people who are there, who are each individual dissociated parts of that mind at large, it makes sense that those things would be factors. So again, just to show the importance of the metaphysics, right? When you talk about the people in the room influencing or manipulate, people would say, well, when you use a ghost box or when you do something like digital seance, are the people's thoughts coming out of the radio? Now, if the devices are fundamentally physical and you're going from the metaphysical view of materialism, now you can't hold materialism and idealism at the same time, because they both say completely opposite things. One says physical things are all that there are and everything else is a byproduct or an illusion of, and the other one says that mental things are all they are and that the physical is just how things are represented to us, right? So when you say that the radio is fundamentally physical, it's a physical thing and my mental activity is in this physical head of mine, now you've got that mountain to climb to go, well, how are the thoughts going into this physical radio that has certain frequencies that it works on? Right? It becomes a nightmare of explanatory just quicksand. Like the harder you try to get out, the further you sink.
I have much to learn from my said Jedi here. I am now the Padawan.
It's just once you understand those core concepts, and then you become more familiar with, if you hold it consistently, it's like somebody being racist on weekends, right? Either you're against people for no good reason, or you love all people and you'll judge people on their character and how they behave, right?
Right.
But you can't be a bigot on weekends and say you're not that during the rest of the week, right?
He's right.
It's the same thing when you have a foundation for something, then you can look at things through that lens, and you can still be open to other perspectives. And then if something resonates or not, it'll make sense to you. Like there are certain things Dr. Jeffrey Kripal would say or Dean Radin that don't necessarily 100% agree with Dr. Bernardo Castro, but I can reconcile and find where I'm comfortable in that because of the fact that I understand the positions and they're not too different. Right. But you see how for us as paranormalists, when the cynics come at us with prove it, show me, all that stuff, you're trying to talk about how thoughts that are in your head, because this squishy thing in your skull is creating your consciousness and your thoughts are all in here. And how is that going out? And then on a radio that has an antenna and can only receive RF signals on frequent, right? It's a nightmare to try to explain.
That's fair.
But if the radio is only physical in how it's represented to us, but fundamentally everything is mental, everything is within consciousness, then you could say, well, how does something mental influence something physical? The physical thing isn't fundamentally physical. It's just represented that way.
Right.
So now if you say your thoughts are coming through the mechanism, it's not that mental thoughts are coming through physical device. It's something mental is influencing something else mental.
Ron, I'm going to have to ask you to stop making me look at things from a different light, please.
It's amazing the amount of information I've taken.
I told you, like the stuff he's got up, it's fucking amazing.
It really is, and to wind things down a little bit, because I know that we're getting toward it. So I know you guys have a bunch of events coming up this year. They're going to be doing the TDSE at. If you would tell people where you're going to be heading through the second half of this year.
I will tell you, I'm actually going to have to look at my calendar, because when you get to a certain age, the fact that I remember who lives in this house with me and what rooms are what rooms is a pretty good accomplishment.
That's fair.
I'll tell you, I can remember to turn on the alarm clock at night.
I have a calendar as well, so I get it. I know Jeremy does as well.
So with Scott McCafferty was in the thing before, we're doing the next IDC Institute with J.W. Pray, the World Gate, in the beginning of June, actually coming up soon, at the Shamley Hotel in Napanoch, New York.
Okay.
And then we have the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash. I know we're doing an event in Massachusetts at SK Pierce Manson on July 11th. Gettysburg Bash, 24th to the 26th. And a few days later, we're doing the first of hopefully what will be many awesome place to have the New Orleans Paracon, the first one, which is the 30th through the 1st of August, July through the 1st of August. And then we have the Maine Paracon in September, the Massachusetts Paracon in September, also the Underworld Paracon in Pennsylvania, in between the Maine and the Massachusetts one in the middle of September on the 19th. And then I think we're doing the New Jersey Para-Unity Expo at the end of the year, I think in November. We're waiting for confirmation for that. We've done it every year, but we always like to just confirm.
That would be awesome. It almost always falls on my birthday weekend.
Does it?
I've never been.
It's a good event.
That is amazing, and I know we've been talking science, but I think Ron and I both follow that guy that does the amazing drumming on TikTok. I know you and I both agree with him. I wanted to bring him up tonight because it boggles my mind. Espirito, I forget what.
Yes, El Espirito. Yes.
El Estepario Siberiano. That's the guy's name. And he's a madman on the drums. The guy's crazy good.
Ron and I both commented on the same post. I remember we had mentioned it in Messenger. I'm like, every time I see that guy's videos, I'm in just awe.
It's mind blowing
of what he can do.
Yeah. He's phenomenal.
The way he did backcountry with one hand while smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
What can you do with that,
dude? Yeah. He was crushing Avenged Sevenfold with one hand and the double bass, and I'm like, oh my lord!
I know.
The foot pedal action alone is.
Yeah, he's ridiculously good, and that people don't realize how hard that is too. When he's doing different patterns on each foot and each hand. It's called syncopation. It's not easy to do. At the speed and accuracy he does it is unbelievable.
So he actually has a triple bass pedal. So the bass pedal is one for the right side, and he has two pedals for the left side. So what you don't see is he's actually switching feet for his left bass pedal while hitting the right bass pedal. That's insane.
And the stick tricks and the one-handed and it's. The only reason I brought it up is because I thought it was just so mind blowing, and the fact that we both commented one night on the same link was actually pretty damn funny. It's like, can you believe this guy? Holy shit! Realistic.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. He's really, really good. He's one of the best I've ever seen.
And I could do it blindfolded.
I'm sure you could, brother, with one hand tied behind your back.
I definitely could not.
So to tie up the show. I always ask my guests the same question that I always do, and I figured I'm going to throw it your way as well. Your Mount Rushmore of horror characters. I usually throw it at everybody, and I figured you must have a little bit of experience in the genre. So what's your Mount Rushmore of horror characters or horror villains or stuff?
What do I need? I need 4 for Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, the big 4. Yeah, in your opinion, of course.
I mean, I'm pulling back. So I've enjoyed horror movies in the past. I fell out of it a little bit more. I know that. Hold on. Yeah, Bill's been in the trenches with us.
Nice.
And he's got a good ear too. He hears a lot of stuff come through.
Does.
Yep. I mean, I always liked Nightmare on Elm Street was probably my favorite. From when I was a kid, when I was younger, I thought that one was good. I mean, and I liked the other ones. I liked Friday the 13th. Honestly, I'm not sure if I can name 4. I know it's a big thing now, but a lot of the cons have paranormal and horror, and I know who a lot of the characters are.
Of course.
But I don't know. I mean, my Mount Rushmore is a little bit truncated, I think. I've got 2.
It's all good, It doesn't make a difference, It's all up to taste, Whether you're into the vintage stuff back in like the Universal Monsters style days, or you go with the big monsters, or you go with like your classics, like your Draculas, your Frankensteins. It's always just something that I throw out there for the guests, like even like movie villains, because I like to throw the category across all platforms, because sometimes people are more into the villain characters on movies versus just horror characters. And it's just something fun. It's just something fun to end the show with, because it's
2 is better than none.
No, I agree with you. And you know the big two, Jason and Freddie. I mean, they pretty much controlled the market for a long time. I mean, granted,
Yeah.
I think Leatherface trumped them by about a couple of years before they both of them. But then it's
That's fair.
yeah, I think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre was like in the early 70s, 74 or 75, something like that.
I think it was 77.
Was it 77? Whatever it
I'm
is,
pretty sure
it's been, I was too young to remember that. I'm sure I was still trying to figure out where I
If
was.
I'm not mistaken, Halloween came out the year before Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so Halloween came out in 76.
There you go.
Sorry, I'm a horror movie buff, so.
How about Pinhead?
I
Pinhead.
love Hellraiser.
I love Hellraiser, but I think the concept was horribly done. I think if they had a better director, it would have been much more it would have been much more soul deriving, if that makes sense.
I totally agree with you. So before we shut this thing down, where can people find you if they want to contact you about everything that they've heard about tonight, or just in general to get more information about the TDSE?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. Again, apologies for that Lourdes couldn't be part of it, but thank you for inviting us, both of you, for both of your shows. We've seen tremendous support from people in this field, from a vast majority of people in this field, of which you guys are at the front line of. So we appreciate it. Any opportunity to do this. So thank you to that. And thank you to the people who tuned in, like Morgan, Pam, Bill, Christy, with good comments and questions. I hope everybody continues to support both of your shows, and you as well with your books, Nathan. That's huge that you have a couple of them done now. I'm proud of that. You should be proud of that.
I've got the one done. I got the second one in the works, and I think we had talked about you possibly writing the foreword for my next one.
You let me know. I'd be honored to do it. So that first and foremost, always for me, lead with gratitude. I appreciate that a lot.
We appreciate you.
It's been my honor to have you on here tonight. It really has. You know,
I appreciate it. It's fun to do, especially shooting the shit with you guys. I always love doing, and I like sharing this stuff. Like I said, just from the last couple of years with the introduction of the metaphysical idealism, changed everything. And I like sharing it because it gets people to think. And I think that's what I hope for. Not, wow, that guy knows something, or wow, he thinks he knows something, or anything in between. Just thought-provoking. You agree with everything I said. You agree with some of what I said. You agree with none of what I said. But to do any of those things, you had to think first. You had to put into your cognitive space that which I said and find it in complete, partial, or no harmony with what you already think or believe. And doing that provokes thought. And that's all that we've been doing with this stuff since we got metaphysically involved more. That's all we've been hoping to do. The website probably is the quick, short answer, now that I've not given a short answer.
it's all good. It's all good.
To the where you can be found stuff. If you get killed, you don't want me to be the witness, because the report would be like this long, and the last sentence would be the part that was important. The website, Gonyac Paranormal, GONYAC, GonyacParanormal.com, has, it should be up to date with the event section. Thank you. I forget that she's in Australia. That's right. That's so cool. That's one of the beautiful things about this. There are people in the idealism ambassadorship group that I meet with Dr. Casper every week who are from Europe, different parts of the States. There are people from Australia in the group. It's fascinating. But the website, GonyacParanormal.com, will have the appearances where we're supposed to appear. If it changes anything, I usually try to keep that up to speed. And the books, the link to Amazon is there. Our socials for Facebook and stuff should be there. We have a YouTube channel, Gonyac Paranormal. Thanks, Bill, for showing up. So it's all there. And again, I can't say enough how grateful I am. Not just you guys had me on, but even for the people who showed up in the chat. I think one of the biggest plagues this field has seen is entitlement and the introduction to something it never had before, which is celebrity. And I know that the entertainment side of this stuff drives ticket sales and it brings people out to events. So I understand that. But I think sometimes it pains me when it gets conflated with that which is not entertainment driven, and that which is a genuine pursuit for an understanding of what might be behind what's going on, or how do we rectify or reconcile, or how do we explain. I don't like that those things get conflated with it. And when I see YouTubers who have not a shred of anything conceptual to offer to the discussion, celebritized, it pains me to say it. It pains me to see it. I understand from the revenue driving, like, you know, if you put a 15 million view YouTuber on a poster, then they'll, you know, the chance of them driving ticket sales is greater than if you put one of our names on it. Right. I understand that. But the thing is don't confuse the circus with the scientists. You mean, one person's doing something, trying to understand or make sense of something, and the other one is trying to make dollars and cents of something, and they're not the same.
I agree with that 1,000%. I could not have said it better myself.
Yeah, that's very true. So, everybody, it's been an amazing evening. My special thanks to Mr. Ron Yacovetti. My special thanks to my co-host this evening, Mr. Nathaniel Elwell. I am Jeremy Cotter. This has been Twisted Tales. Gwen, take us home. Thank you very much, everybody.